Hello, this is a slide deck that I produced for a course on photography that I was teaching at the local high school. Its main purpose was to demonstrate a different range of techniques to the students and also how you could work to a particular theme. And I hope you find it useful. If you do, please don't hesitate to contact me. So without more ado, what we're going to cover. It's an overview of my style and background and philosophy as to how I take photographs. And then I want to show some examples of work that I've done on a theme. And I'd like you all to take these and think what you could do with them, how you could expand upon them. So we're going to cover a series I'd done way back in the 90s on the city at night, which is based in Liverpool, England. Some photographs of landscapes that I've conducted. Texture, abstract photos, work we'd done for a themed show in Worcester, Massachusetts, and then some architecture. So, about me, I've always been interested in image making. My father was an ardent photographer. I've used a huge array of cameras, just a few of them are shown here. There's a Nikon FM, which I class as my first real sort of decent camera. Although I did have my father's Minolta SRT 100 before that. That's a photograph of a Bender field camera, which I actually made from a kit and worked astonishingly well. Nikon F801, Mamiya 6x7 RB67 unit. Fantastic camera, very heavy though. A Minox 35 GT, which was my favourite pocket camera of all time, before digital came along, and excellent lens on it, and produced some great shots on that. And also a Bronica ETRS, another great medium format camera, this time 6 by 4.5 centimeter negatives. I used to love to shoot Ilford film, though I did shoot some at Kodak. And for colour, I tended to use a Fuji RDP 100 and on Kodak as well. I also had my own darkroom, full darkroom. Could do black and white, colour negative and colour positive. Although I must say I found colour to not be so much fun because there's such a lot of things that can go wrong. But black and white, I done a whole range of things, and of course nowadays I'm entirely digital. I use a Nikon D800E as my main camera, which I think is fantastic. Produces like 46 megabyte raw files, which are as good as I used to get from medium format, and I really love it. And I spend just as much time in Photoshop and other Adobe products as ever I done with the darkroom. Question I'm often asked is, what's the best camera to use? I have a very simple answer to that: the one you have with you. Sometimes I've spoken to people and they say, oh, I didn't take that shot because I didn't have the right equipment with me. But if you're going to lose that moment, just use whatever you've got. As an example, this next shot here is of an old truck that was in a scrapyard. Engine number 8, I call it. And I was walking there one winter's day, and I saw this, and I didn't have my regular camera with me, didn't have a tripod with me. What I did have was my iPhone, so I took it with that, and slight bit of manipulation in Photoshop afterwards, but it actually worked out really well. I actually sold this image, and it's been a very successful for me. So don't be afraid. If there's a shot that you can take, just take it with whatever you've got with you. So, here's some shots of a city at night. These were shot, I was attending a class at the Open Eye Gallery in Liverpool. And the teacher said, look, why don't you go outside your normal scheme of things and just go out and shoot the city at night. Completely open. So I went out with my Nikon FM loaded with HP5 and a flash, and I wandered around the town looking for good photographs. And this one here is in the bus depot at the pier head, which is down by the river in the River Mersey in Liverpool. And I just introduced myself, say, hey, I'm doing a series in Liverpool at night. And this lady, a bus driver, was really sort of joking, and she put on this face. I just took the shot. It never happened again. The only time I could get her to say that or to look like that. Ideally, I would have liked the guy to be turning facing me, but it's one of those things you can't always get exactly what you want. But I think it makes a good shot. Technically, it's a bit harsh, contrast a bit high. You can see the reflection of the flash, but what makes it is that lady's face. This next shot was taken in Lime Street Station. This is a railway station. It's the main one in Liverpool. And I just loved the grouping of these people. They were all together, but apart. Guy on the left's talking to someone facing the wall. Guy on the left's in a second to the left, having a deep conversation with someone. Same with the guy next to him, and the lady's also having a conversation, but she's not looking at the guy on the left. The guy on the left's not looking at the lady on the right. And it just shows, this whole combination of things, people being together but apart in a public place, which I like that sort of theme with things. This next one, I was down by the pier head, and it was quite late one night, probably 9 p.m. It was in the winter, so it was dark. And I came across this gang of kids, I suppose they're, 12, 13, something like that. Probably shouldn't be out at that time of night in this particular location. It's a very gritty area, as you can see from the garbage and rubbish lying around. And they just love the idea of having their pictures taken. And so this kid with the arm raised was really hamming it up for me. And same with the girl on the left, and she was looking up at him, and I just caught this moment. He's got his arm raised, the girl in white's looking up at him, the girl on the next to him in the check is waving, and the girl at the end, that's what really makes it for me. She's not quite sure whether she should be part of this or not, and she's a bit anxious maybe. But in the end, I thought it was a great shot. In Liverpool, there's a slang term for scallies, and these were definitely some scallies that were down by the pier head. This one is my favourite one. It's one of my favourite shots of all time. Again, it was down by the pier head. It was not by the bus depot. It was not by the ferry terminal. This old gentleman standing there, I should say, all alone, looking out. Garbage by his feet, a graffiti behind him, hands in pockets. I have to wonder, what was he thinking of? Where was he going? Was someone meeting him? Was he just all alone? And I took this shot, and I had time to compose it. So I just like the receding lines into the darkness in this. So one of my favourites, anyway. So when we go to landscape to me. I'm often asked the question, what is landscape? And I like to refer to a comment that one of my favourite landscape photographers, Faye Godwin, sadly you passed away now, and she was asked the same question, and she said it's not chocolate box photographs, it's not, your blue skies and nice trees and things, a little bit of a reflection. It's things that tell a story, that have interest to them. So here what I've done is I'm also very interested in trains, and this was on the Settle and Carlisle railway line in northwest England, and this engine's called Princess Elizabeth was coming down, and I should say it was actually coming up because it was on a slope, so it's making lots of smoke, it's working really hard. I took this shot in colour negative, and then what I've done in Photoshop is I removed the colour from the rest of it, accentuated the contrast. And here we got the wavy line of the old stone wall contrasting with the straight line of the train. And of course, for visual interest, I kept the colour. The engine's quite nice looking engine, and the blue carriages, etc. behind them. So I think it worked out quite well. This next one was shot in Massachusetts. It's an old quarry, and I just liked the reflection in the lake, that's all. There's some nice, neat sort of graffiti in there. There's some contrast between the green trees and the white rock. It's actually granite, and then the diagonal lines. I think it's a very appealing sort of picture. and matching up with the reflection. And then I took this and I was looking at it on my iPhone, and I turned it from horizontal to vertical, and up came this, a face. And I think it's one of those sort of serendipitous moments when things just happen. And I'd like to say that I pre-visualized it, but I didn't. It was a happenstance, and I think it worked out really well. This last one is more of a traditional landscape. This is on top of Cadillac Mountain in Acadia National Park in Maine. The sky was beautiful. You have these rows and rows of serried sort of clouds receding into the distance. There's the actually the ocean in the middle, the mountains. So I had a wide-angle lens on. I think it was a 17mm, and I crouched low down to the ground because I particularly like these wavy lines and the colours of the granite again, leading into the far landscape. And I got 2 trees on either side, which would stand out, and it produced a harmonious whole. Next idea is texture. Texture to me, I mean, I really like this. I like shooting in black and white, as you can see, and I like to bring out the usually things associated with industry. Rust is a favorite of mine, and this was taken in an abandoned railroad tunnel in Clinton, Massachusetts, and it's looking up into the ceiling. And the light was behind me, probably several hundred yards behind me. It was a very long exposure. It was about 20 seconds exposure. Of course, you had to use a tripod. It looks okay in colour, but in black and white, it really shows up the texture, and again, receding into the distance. Here's another texture shot. This was shot in the winter, or late fall, late autumn, and I think it's the fender or the mudguard of an old-fashioned truck of some description, been laying around for a large amount of years, and it had all of this concrete and rust stuck to it. It had this nice, pleasing red colour, plus the colour of the sun as well, making it stand out. I used a wide-angle lens, one of my favourite techniques, and brought it really close, probably 6 inches away from the front of the bumper. And I like to think it's sort of, there's a whole host of analogies here. Some people think it looks a bit like a whale, this very large sort of fish sort of receding into the distance with its tail flapping. So there's all sorts of things that that brings out in this. This next one, I was in I think the weather was bad, and I was indoors, and I just wanted to take some photographs. So I put my macro lens on, and I was looking around for things to photograph, and we'll see some more later on. And I thought, I wonder what my skin would look like, really blown up. So this is actually the skin, or the joint between my thumb and my first finger on my left hand. And I had the camera on a tripod again, and I was moving my hand backwards and forward to get it into focus. And I think it worked out really well. And I tend to call this one elephant eye, because it just looks like like a closed eye. At least that's what I think it looks like anyway. But again, you can see the texture, and another great benefit of having a very high resolution camera and lens to be able to see all the individual marks in this. Next area that I explored was abstract. Now here I was in a local landmark called Purgatory Chasm, and I was shooting many photographs, but none of them would speak to me. None of it was really, I wasn't having a good day taking photographs. And I came across this tree stump, and it reminded me, I don't know whether you've seen the film Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and it's set in, I think it's at Devil's Tower in Wyoming. It sort of reminded me of that. So I take some photographs of it, and I come back, and I wanted to really stand out. So first of all, I turn it into a monochrome, then I insert a mask and just bring back the colour for the tree stump. It looked really good, but I was getting distracted by the surroundings. So what I done is I started to use the transform function within Photoshop and made some random swirl marks in it, and I think it worked out worked out good. This next one, again, I was at home, wanted to do some macro photography, and I have some different coloured inks, and I took them and dropped them into olive oil, again with the tripod, some lighting, and the macro lens. This whole image is probably about 2 by 2 centimeters maybe. And here I actually shook the oil and ink, and then again I used Photoshop to insert this swirl into it, because it reminds me very much of a bacterium, or maybe a phage or sort of bloodstream, etc. Strong sort of biological connotations. So the colours are pretty neat. This is probably my favourite one. Many people like the previous image, but this one, I think it has a three-dimensional quality to it as opposed to the two-dimensional of the previous image. And I just think it's a very pleasing array of red and green and blue and yellow, and I just think it's a pleasing composition. This one was taken inside a silo. It's actually a silo that was being constructed. I think it was for wood pellets, and the very bottom of the silo was open. It was probably about a 12-inch diameter hole. So I lay down on my back and I had my camera. Again, I didn't have my real camera with me. This was taken with a Canon point and shoot. Looking up inside, and I just, the combination of the walls and this radial pattern produced a very pleasing composition. And it's again, you've got all the elements of a composition. You've got it's a strong focal point. It's got repetition in there on multiple levels. It's got this three-dimensional quality. You don't know whether it's coming towards you or going away. You got these visual tricks. Now we move on to a themed show that we did with my friends in the Blackstone Valley Art Association. We decided to produce a Twisted Dolls pop-up show. The basics behind this were that at the local Salvation Army, the guys there tend to take dolls that have been donated and string them up, like hang them from the local tree, which I thought was really neat. And we were talking about this, and so we said, wow, let's do a show with a few of us about twisted dolls. And it was on the 30th, so just before Halloween, 30th of November, I should say, 2015. So there was a pop-up show for 2 hours in central Worcester. And I took this one. What happened, I was actually on the way back from the Salvation Army, and there was a new antique store that had opened. And we went in, and the lady had a whole room full of dolls. And I said, do you mind if I come back with my tripod and camera and take some photographs? I said, sure, no problem. And we put it on Facebook, etc. for her. And this is one of them. Now, here I just think it's this whole thing of sort of buddies. You got the Pillsbury doll and this doll next to it, with these eyes staring straight at you. I think it looks a lot better in black and white. I also used a vignette, to remove the background in the corners, and just for to demonstrate, this is what the image, as was taken, looks like. And you see, it's nothing scary or weird about it whatsoever. But here I definitely used a pre-visualization. These were the images that I wanted to get in my mind. I'll just go back to it again to bring out these features. Same story with the next one. I call this At Rest ? Which most people find very disturbing, and I find it disturbing myself. The original, here we see the original, is nothing like it. It's just a small baby in a small crib next to a Barbie doll, and there's other bits and pieces lying around. But let's go back again. I converted it into black and white. I altered the levels, done some vignetting. The lighting was really beautiful. The shadows that it brought into it, and the baby's face. Again, it was meant to be disturbing, and I think it is. Here's another one. This was one of those expensive type dolls that people tend to put in their living rooms, and it was juxtaposed with this weird looking dog in a set of overalls. And here's the original, which I don't think is particularly scary or It's just a trifle odd, but turning it into black and white, introducing some strong contrast, again, vignetting, you're bringing out the shadows, really makes it work very well. This is a section on architecture and trying to make a pleasing image. Normally, I like to use the rule of thirds a lot, but here it was an image that benefited strongly from having the center point right in the center. And this is a local radio station in Worcester, your WTAG, and this building dates from, I think, 1927 or 29. It's very symmetrical. It's a classic, 1920s, 1930s style. You picture in your very clean surroundings, these four masts and a beautiful sky, and it just begged out to take this photograph. Quite late in the day, as you can see from the long shadows, which again is another a good technique to be able to bring out the depth of an image. Here, this one was taken with an iPhone. I was in Switzerland. It was early one morning. It was about 6:37 maybe. Lovely blue sky. The sun was on the face of this building, which had this amazing golden coloured sort of front. It's made out of perforated metal, and I just love the repetition in it. I love the contrast between the gold and the blue. And the iPhone's an amazing camera. It works pretty well as long as you have sufficient light. Here's another one. This is a castle. It's in Flint, North Wales. There's the River Dee, you can just see behind it. And these are the castle walls. Again, I love the texture. This was taken with film and scanned later on. I think it was taken with FP4. And I think it's 11th century, and I actually sold the rights to this to be used in a tourist brochure. So what I wanted to do for the next class, or in this case for the next video, is we're going to do, I asked the class to develop a theme that they have, submit maybe 3 photographs, and we'll talk them through. And then we'll also start to talk about techniques, sort of harmony and how you would take a picture, and then more about the technical aspects. Picture on the right is one of my cats. This is Spike, and he's playing with a toy mouse, and I just like it for the joie de vivre. And finally here, I call this piece Dirty Old Town. I went out one day and just walked up and down 200 yards of one of the local streets, and I took a shot of all of the pieces of garbage that are on there. Then I made it into a collage in Photoshop and printed it out at very large. I think it's about 30 by 20. And I also have a video on that called Dirty Old Town. I think it's very interesting, and it just amazes me the trash that people will throw out of their cars. So thank you for listening. If you want any more information, please visit my website. That's www.bobevansphoto.com or www.arcarts.com. I'm also on Facebook as Arc Arts. I'm also at Flickr as Arc Arts as well, and I routinely tweet and also send out on Instagram. So again, thank you for listening. Goodbye.